It was love that brought this week's guest, Marina Williams, from Russia to London, and a career that has encompassed every area of the TV business, from channels to production. Whether it was at CNN, Cartoon Network, Fox Kids, Disney, Fox, CME, or Endemol, Marina has worked with some of the world's biggest media brands and companies before co-founding Asacha Media Group to leverage that knowledge in the streaming age. We talked about building channel businesses in Central and Eastern Europe, the value of local production to broadcasters and streamers, and working with some of the icons of the international TV business. Enjoy. Hi, Marina. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Danny. Thank you for inviting me.
My absolute pleasure. I always like to start with a fun question. And so, my question to you is this. You've got a fantastic track record in working with inspirational leaders. And as an alumnus of Fox Kids, you are, of course, very well versed in the world of the Power Rangers. So, if you were putting together a team of inspirational executives to be the TV Power Rangers, who would you choose for that team?
Well, since you mentioned Power Rangers, obviously I have to mention Haim Saban for sure, and for several reasons. I think you want to go ahead with a new business or with a new venture with somebody with a huge vision. And I think if you look around the world and you compare to what people created and the outcome result, Haim is definitely one of those visionaries, turning Power Rangers in absolutely incredible entertainment company. And not only, by the way, in kids, he launched Fox Family in US at the time. And then he managed to do a joint venture with Rupert Murdoch on the Fox Kids side and made an incredible deal with Disney, which we all complimented him for, as I was part of the management at the time. So definitely Haim. And I was lucky enough to join Fox Kids at the very early stages of its launch. The company, in fact, was raising some public money, and Enon Kreis was hired by Haim Saban to lead that venture and hired a management team. Enon was young, very determined, absolutely unstoppable, very sincere and honest, and deal maker. And if you go on a journey, you also want somebody who doesn't play politics, who is really down to earth and ready to get things done. He can be tough, but I never minded that. You have to be tough if you build in business. So Enon for sure. It's going to be strange because I will mention three people from that era actually, and Marc Antoine, of course, he actually joined Fox Kids. That's how we met, slightly later than me. And we worked together and built incredible business, like 46 million subscribers in 3 or 4 years from launch. In those days, these were huge numbers for cable, and direct TV was just launching. And Marc Antoine is incredible personality because he is so multicultural, which you need when you grow a global business. And he reads a lot. He is very interesting. He knows the history of so many countries, and he has a great sense of humor. Another person who has a great sense of humor, but I don't know whether French and British would work together in the same venture. But Tim Hinks, whom I met at Endemol later on, was CEO of UK, was quite a leader of that production direction, and now he runs his own company. So very subtle British humor. You need that, I think, on the journey because you have ups and downs, and you have to look at everything with humor, I think, because things are not always rosy. That's probably a good enough team, 5 people to start, including myself, if I was go on a journey.
I won't ask you to specify which color Power Ranger they were or individually. So that's maybe getting too much into the weeds of the Power Rangers. But it seems like a very strong team. So I'm sure they would do a lot of amazing things. Were you a big TV fan when you were growing up in St. Petersburg? And what did TV and the TV landscape in Russia look like at the time?
That's a very interesting question. It makes me feel ancient when you ask these questions because I feel like I belong to two different eras. Obviously, I came to UK, quite young, but I did grow up in St. Petersburg. I grew up with state television and I would say quite incredible movie business, which was subsidized by the government, obviously, at the time, so it was not commercial. But the number of directors who produced incredible movies were quite big, and I remember always, those movie cinemas. There was no popcorn and there was no no Coke. But there were really lovely cakes and coffee and tea, and the seats were maybe not as comfortable as, let's say, in Hampstead and Everyman Theatre.
And what brought you to London? And how did you get your start in the TV business at CNN International?
Well, it was very romantic, actually. It's romance which brought me to London. I lie, and otherwise, I met my husband, Mark, as a student. I studied English language at the university, and he came to study Russian language, which was very adventurous in the Cold War times. Well, deja vu, things are adventurous these days as well, unfortunately. But he came to study, and we met in the place called House of Friendship because we were not allowed to meet anywhere else privately. It had to be only a public place. And we were warned not to give our phone numbers, not to give our addresses. But I happened to break the rules and give my phone numbers, and that's what happened. So years after, when the borders opened, it was not that easy because I couldn't travel for a long time, even though there was a promise at the university at the time that all students of English would have at least a month to practice their English on exchange course. But my year happened to be one-way exchange. So the British students came, but we were not allowed to go. So I was able to visit Britain for the first time only in late 80s, early 90s when Berlin Wall came down. And during that time, and that's to answer your question, how I ended up with CNN, during that time, I worked in travel business. So on top of my university degree, I took diploma in travel management and also as a translator. And I was lucky enough to meet a lot of high dignitaries who were coming from US into our USSR. It was still USSR at the time. And one of the delegations was the members of Young American Presidents Association. They were amazing, and there was one woman, I think only, all other were men. There were not so many women presidents under the age of 40. That's why they're called Young American President, YPA. And Kay Koplowitz kept like nagging at me, saying, "You must do something in television." I said, "Kay, it's impossible. Everything is controlled by the government in my country. Oh, and I'm not connected enough. I don't know how to get into it." And she said, "Trust me, it will privatize. And if you come to US, there is only one person who adores your country, and this is Ted Turner. And you must find a way to Ted Turner because he wants CNN to be distributed everywhere. He runs Goodwill Games, and this is your way." And at some point in New York, I was visiting, and she offered tickets to cable convention, and they just opened office in London. Mark Rudolph, wonderful guy, at the time was the first managing director of international business. It's hard to believe now that there was only one company at the time, US company, which was doing international business. None of the big companies like NBC, ABC, all of these networks, they were so domestic. But Ted Turner was really among the first. He wanted to be everywhere, and he hired me. So I was very lucky.
And Central and Eastern Europe was obviously going through a really interesting time, a post-Soviet economic and cultural revolution. What did CNN represent to the platforms that you were pitching to, and what did CNN bring to them that the local news services couldn't deliver?
It's a very interesting question because at the beginning, I would say when this country started to open up, they were all going through the same process. They were all going through privatization of state TV. And even though everybody kind of bulked these countries into the same region, but they were all going through similar, but I would say quite different processes as well. And what I learned technologically, they were also quite different. For example, Romania absolutely shocked me at the time because it was the most cabled country in Central Eastern Europe. Not cable that you could imagine these days because it was all over the wires cables. But it could deliver to people, up to 20, 50 channels, maybe even 60 channels. While in Russia and in USSR, in CIS countries, it was impossible. The way the systems were designed, you could only get 5 channels into the apartment blocks and no more. So there were a lot of technological challenges. And as you can imagine, then you turn up and you say, well, they all feel like heroes by the way that they have CNN because American networks were prohibited. And quite of a sudden I say, well, yeah, you are heroes, but you have to pay for it. And that was news to them and a very big educational process. And I think it was incredible as well because I was at the beginning of the industry when they were just sorting out laws, directions, how to deal with things. They wanted to learn. And I was very lucky to build friendship with the chairmen of the cable associations of all these countries. And I remember their names, now. Damir Cibic in ex-Yugoslavia, Andrei Ostrovsky in Poland, Mircu Suci in Romania. They were all these people, Raja Laika in Hungary. They kind of embraced me and they said, okay, let's work together. So how do we do it? And the industry was formed. And then CNN, I think, was one of the first. And then, of course, all cable networks started to come in, hiring people, hiring agents on the ground. MTV, Eurosport were the most active, and then Discovery at the time.
And you mentioned Ted Turner. To what extent did his personality set the tone for CNN during that period?
He was really involved into the business, really hands-on. One of the things that Ted actually studied at the time because he very, very carefully chose journalists and presenters for the network, which of course sets the tone and direction. He started this famous conference called World Report, which was inviting journalists from all sorts of countries. And I don't think any other organization was doing that because he truly believed in emerging markets and he wanted to create CNN with the faces of people from all around the world. So he would invite journalists from not only from Central Eastern Europe, but from India, from Africa. And this was like big workshops organized to train them and some of them ended up working for CNN for many, many years. Like I remember this Ralitsa Vasilova who came on this from Bulgaria and she became the face of CNN for many years to come. So he set the tone, I think, a lot. And I've been in his office many times, many meetings with all sorts of people. He was an incredible man. He practically lived in the office. And I have a funny story when he had a Russian delegation there because we were applying for a license to broadcast CNN over the air to Moscow. And I brought one of the, well, like chairman of the TV tower to the meeting and said, what can I bring to Ted? The only thing I can bring is a bottle of vodka. And I say, oh my God, I don't think Ted drinks. He said, well, but we are as we are, this is what we are. So we come to the office, and Ted had an office in Atlanta on the top floor. He always was in Atlanta. I mean, this is where the channel started, as you know. And we go to his office and sit in the office area. It's quite a big one. And then Vyacheslav gives him this bottle and he says, it's impossible. This is office environment. You should have never done this. This is terrible. I should not even take this meeting. And of course, everybody like taken back. Oh, sorry, sorry. He said, but hang on a moment. Let's move to this side. And we move to the other side of the office. He presses button and a bed comes down from there because he slept in the office. And that's how long he worked there, the hours. And he said, okay, this is a private area. Here I can accept this present. Yeah, and he watched not only CNN, later Cartoon and TNT was launched as well. So he watched a lot of it to give his personal opinion.
And these were rapidly developing economies with limited funds for international content, I guess. So, how did you structure your deals to have them make sense for all parties?
A lot of negotiations for sure, and understanding their market environment and what consumers can afford was very, very important. Because obviously I never believe into deals where only one party is the winner because these deals never work. So I think you have to design them from the start in such a way that they will work long term for both parties. And maybe that's why they were successful as far as I remember them, as part of maybe apart from one big renegotiation with UPC when they bought that many cable networks. So every market had its own price, which made sense, and volume mattered for sure. So businesses were growing, and I'm proud to say that I always started businesses from scratch, and then because it was earlier days and seeing this market progress and businesses growing 30, 35, 40% per year, this is something which is so rewarding.
Where was the most unexpected place and unexpected CNN distribution deal that you brought home?
Slovenia. I had the most incredible trip and completely out of the blue. I mentioned this name just 5 minutes ago, Damir Cibic. I think I met him at one of the big global cable conventions, and he said, I know what it costs, etc. I want to also make the industry prepare for what it's worth, and I want to unite cable operators. Please, please, please don't hesitate. Come to Ljubljana. I will organize their meeting with all the cable operators, and trust me, I will bring them not only from Slovenia, from some neighboring countries. You won't regret it. I want you to set up an event in Slovenia. We were lucky, marketing budgets were pretty decent in those days to grow the businesses. So we found a villa which used to belong to Tito in the countryside of Ljubljana and set up a presentation there for CNN with my beautiful marketing team. We arrived, and Damir said, because there was no electronic signatures in those times, he said, just in case, prepare the templates of the agreements because I don't want you to leave empty-handed. You'll have to go back with signed contracts. The doors open, and I ended up having maybe 60 or 70 amazingly looking guys walking in, CEOs or owners of cable stations, and I ran out of the contracts. So I came back. That was the most unexpected trip and the most unexpected result because also they paid really good prices and it was like 3 to 5 year deals. And I came back with a stack of contracts.
Amazing. That's the sales trip you dream of.
Exactly.
So you switched from news to kids channels, first with Cartoon Network within the Turner organization, and then with Fox Kids. How did you find that transition? And compare and contrast the task of distributing these channels with a service like CNN?
It actually came very naturally to me because coincidentally, I had my first child when I moved to Cartoon Network, and I had my second son when I moved to Fox Kids. So seeing them grow and developing kids content was a really amazing experience. And actually, I think it's fantastic to be a mother of a preschool child and doing preschool programming because you are so hands-on. You know what your kid wants, but you also know what you want as a parent. You know what kind of safety you want, what kind of entertainment. And Cartoon Network was one of the first, apart from Disney, of course. Disney was the biggest brand, so everybody wanted to be Disney, but you could not be Disney because Disney brand was already so well known, like impossible to compete. So you could only come up with a different niche. Cartoon Network also had very good library. What can I say? Hanna-Barbera library, and then of course Turner merged with Time Warner, and some of the Warner Brothers cartoons arrived as well. So launching Fox Kids was a lot more challenging, and that switch was sort of, oh my God, how am I gonna make it work? And is there enough space in the cable networks and DCH platforms for another kids channel, and how do you differentiate it? And we found a niche. We realized that we had to go a lot more local, do translations much faster, launched different feeds. Like we were launching channels like hotcakes. I think I launched 15 channels in 2 years. And we even like rebranded them, some more for preschool, like Fox Kids Play versus Fox Kids. And we went more boys. And we specifically made it, and I had two sons, and I have two sons. So, and it actually worked because it made it very clear what it was about. It was a little bit more action driven, but quite good. That was exciting, very different moving from news. I enjoyed kids business a lot because it also offered a lot more thinking, commercial thinking in terms of 360-degree development. News was kind of very heavy lifting in those days. There was no digital. There were funny things like CNN text and hotel partnership plans where you could find the name of the hotel on CNN text. It sounds like ancient times. But with kids, you could immediately think so much broader. It's about merchandising, licensing, product integration, working with fantastic brands, events for kids, shows for kids. So I think it was also a mind opener for me to think more commercially, not just TV per se.
So you experienced the corporate cultures of Turner, Disney, and then Fox, where you brought their channels to the European market after the Fox Kids specific period. So how do they compare?
They're all quite different, I have to say. Obviously, there are similarities, but I also think it depends in which division you are and in which stage of development you are. I think I was very lucky because I happened to be in the companies always starting something new, and it's very different from coming in and inheriting some division and trying to take it further or already been integrated in a big environment. So Disney, I was actually there not for such a long time. I swapped from Disney to Fox, and the main reason, not because I didn't like Disney, but the shock from moving from Fox Kids, which was the most entrepreneurial, fast-growing, quick, absolutely no politics company with amazing people all around the world and growing so fast. And when the deal happened with Disney, everything slowed down. So that was a little bit like, wow, how long is it going to be that slow? How long would it take to make a decision about this or about that? And it was understandable because, of course, Disney had to integrate big business. Also, it happened after September 11, the deal. So it was a bit of a shock for everybody globally. But I happened to, at Fox Kids, to work also very closely with another Fox division, News Corp division. I work closely with a wonderful gentleman, Marty Pompadour, who used to run ABC and was running emerging markets for Rupert Murdoch at the time. So I was kind of always on two chairs, so cable, but I wanted to see more. So he was looking into developing free-to-air channels. I helped him in some territories with some network connections, understanding of the business. And he told me, well, you're probably gonna look for something like new venture. Why don't you go to Washington and see David Haslington, who is just about to launch Fox Channels business? And I was visiting my friend, went to have a coffee with David, and he said, why don't you come in and we start launching Fox channels? And that was it. So Disney was short for me. My colleagues, my team stayed on for 20 years and over, and they had an incredible ride. So I don't know. I don't think I missed anything, but it was fantastic company for sure. But I was just hungry. I wanted to do more, wanted to build more.
And next came CME and the world of free TV in Central and Eastern Europe. How did you navigate this complex set of territories to deliver a comprehensive strategy in your CME and now free TV era?
CME is an interesting organization, especially at the time when I joined it. When I joined the company, it was still pretty much run by Ronald Lauder, so the son of Estée Lauder, big cosmetic, as you know, owner, and Hungarian by origin, who left her story is, I mean, probably the most inspirational story. She was making creams, from what Ronald told me, in the Brooklyn flat with many other neighbors. And then everybody said, this is incredible, buy more. Then she opened boutiques, and then she ended up with an empire. So Ronald brought this, I guess, this feeling of entrepreneurship from his mother into Central Europe, and he was the founder of Central Media Enterprises at the time, launching, I would say, being an investor first because it was a public company. He owned 20% and his family of the business, and the 80% was on the stock market. It was more of an investment company when I came in rather than an operational company. They were multiple local partners, and local partners were operating the business. And one of the things that I was doing at the time, first of all, actually trying to create more control and a coherent operational group with certain synergies, more control of financial operations, strategies for thematic channels launch, which of course was great to build on my thematic cable experience. And these were also the first steps then to launch local production because it was interesting what happened in those markets. For a long time they were controlled by the government, so it was state television with some good entertainment, like especially shows. They were fantastic, but not so many TV series, movies, as I said, but the output was not, that huge, so it wouldn't fill up your airtime. And then when the markets opened, all of the stations started to acquire US product, predominantly US product. And the prime time was dominated by US series. But of course, at a certain point in time, local viewers wanted to transition naturally to local content. So I was there at this incredible time actually to see how the consumer direction changes with their political and market development. And it was fantastic to be there at the time when this Romania and Ukraine and Croatia started to launch their first TV series, becoming total hits. It was amazing for producers in those days because they could come to the channel. I remember the first deal was like probably 60 episodes signed off just like that with no breakup clause. So for producers, amazing time because you could make a lot of money on the volume. No, this was sort of like telenovelas. Not so much soaps actually in those territories. No, so we never had something like, let's say, EastEnders in UK, but many exciting series. And one thing which was challenging, of course, these countries don't really buy products from each other unless, so that synergy was not there. You could only generate them from leveraging deals with big studios or production expertise and development money. Culturally very different, each of them, and changing people in the certain places, hiring new people was exciting, educating, finding the way also to grow new talent. But you can see as they see me, obviously not the same as it was in those days because of the growth of the markets. The first hit was the 2008, the economic crisis, when the market started to decline in terms of advertising. But they're still extremely strong. The free to air is incredibly strong. 5 to 6 hours a day is viewed by consumers, it's incredible per day, 5 to 6 hours on free to air. You won't find it in Western Europe anywhere. So it's a beautiful situation, I think.
In 2010, you switched to the content and production side of things. So, building, I guess, on that initial exposure to production. And that's when you joined Endemol, later to become Endemol Shine. What was the role and how do production and distribution businesses compare with broadcast businesses?
Good question. Because one of the reasons I moved actually from cable to broadcast, because I really wanted to have a more interesting, broad selection of content for specific channels to deal with. Because in cable, even though, yes, content is exciting, but there is a very high repeat factor of shows on networks. That's how they were built, that's how they made money. And even though it depended on advertising, but the model was kind of 75% subscription based, 25% advertising based. So you do want ratings, but you want more sort of that loyalty to the brand that you create. And it's a very different approach to broadcasts where you literally wake up every morning and you are like having your coffee and waiting for the ratings to arrive. And you realize that your decision, so you see the result of your decision practically immediately on the rating charts of the measurement system. And this is a big differentiation from Fox Kids because I think this gives you opportunity to understand, do you have the right team? Do you make right decisions yourself? Do you program correctly? Do you program well against your competitor? Are you following the trends? Can you set up new trends? Will the viewers follow you? And it's a completely different ball game. It's a lot more risky, but it's a lot more rewarding.
At Endemol, though, you had moved to the production side of
Yes,
things,
so
production distribution.
after cable and broadcast, I thought, okay, and the industry, it was clear, was already changing. It was technology was developing, Google, YouTube. It became very clear to me that wherever you are, you need content. And it's much better to be with content and creation of content rather than one technological mean because everybody will want it. And then you can, rather than sitting in cable or in DTH platform or in a broadcast station, being with a producer, you're going to deal with all of that. So, which is also very exciting because you deal with a variety of clients, and this broadens your mind because you learn not only from the organization you work within, but you learn from your clients. The way they operate, what they want, and especially with technology and developing and more clients appearing, clearly being within Endemol and then also merge and shine into Endemol, been absolutely fantastic experience. And This is actually my longest, I would say, longest in years. So every company I was like 4 or 5 years. I was almost 10 years with Endemol. Been very exciting.
So, having worked in startup or nascent businesses up until that point, within corporate environments, but still very much growth businesses, you then co-founded a new TV business yourself called Asacha Media Group in 2019. I guess on the cusp of the COVID pandemic and lockdown. What was the gap in the market that you were aiming to fill alongside your partners at Asacha?
So when I was at Endemol, and every company you learn a lot from, and you see their strengths and you see their weaknesses. And I always worked in European, or I would say emerging world predominantly, some Southern European countries as well as I went along. However, it was clear that all bigger distributors were always distributing and focusing on English language content. And I tried to persuade my colleagues about the Turkish content, about the Spanish content, but the libraries that salespeople were responsible for were predominantly English. And it's easier to sell the product that you, as a salesperson, speak the language. Even if you dub, even if you translate, it's not something you know so well, not something you can sell so well. So I was not on the sales side in Endemol. I was on the production side. I was managing production businesses. So I had to deal with my counterparts who were selling product. And I understand they have their priorities and their budget goals, but that actually gave me an idea at the time that if you deliver product to the people directly, it doesn't matter because it will be dubbed anyway. It doesn't matter which language is the original language. If it's a great product, they will love it because English language is not the first language for Italians or for Spanish or for many other countries in the world. So they watch English, in fact, also dubbed or subtitled in their local language. And Netflix was just appearing, I would say, in Europe. It was already very dominant in US. And that gap that we felt was really there, that the streamers will start coming to Europe, but they will be newcomers. They will have new teams and they will need good European product to rely on for two reasons actually. One, because consumers will want, the subscribers will want local business, but two, the governments also will want the American streamers to have European content, and there are obviously European regulations. So, and that's how Asasha was born at the time, to capture on that move of the streamers because they were not yet there, but they were to come. So we raised the money and we found the production companies who believed into that new growth opportunity, into our vision, and came on board. And it did happen. They're all working with streamers now.
The TV business went through a structural shift in the first half of this decade. How did your model at Asacha evolve over time to take that into account?
Unfortunately, it was a little bit too short, maybe for us. Where it took us 18 months or so to do the plan and raise the money, but we launched the company in 2020, and we've been approached and sold the business in 2024. So over 4 years, I think the predominant change in Europe, because we mainly operated in Italy, France, and yes, of course, also three assets in UK. I still consider UK Europe somehow. And the biggest change was actually opening doors to the streamers and structuring the windows and also managing the IP ownership in negotiations, finding interesting commercial models. How can you actually hold on to the IP ownership as much as you can, because in a way situation is easier now from that point of view, because a lot of streamers realize that the model of keeping content exclusively and controlling it completely, it's not sustainable. So they are opening up doors where you can do deals across cross-border deals or cross free-to-air to streamer, etc. This was not, that was a challenge. It was not that available yet, so we had to handle this carefully.
So, having sold the business, as you say, in 24 to Fremantle and staying on for the transition, what's next for Marina Williams and how do you plan to navigate this new TV landscape?
Oh, good question. Good question, Danny. I'm doing a few things. Surprisingly, in a new world, in the Middle Eastern world at the moment, mainly because I'm interested to see where I can bring values from my expertise, where something is still missing and you can help grow. And I believe that despite all the political difficulties, there is definitely amazing opportunity there because it's a very young market. 60% of population is under 40. It's by the way, from kids' point of view. So I'm on the board now of one of their animation kids and family businesses, which is funded by Abu Dhabi Media Fund and helping them grow that part of the business, and also looking at something else which may be announced later in the year.
So, looking back, what would be the biggest lesson from your career that you would pass on to your younger self?
The biggest advice I would give, always think broader than what the box you are placed in. Because I think when you, especially if you work for a big corporation, and I've seen it with some people, and you can see the difference between people who come in and they just do their job and they're so careful not to help others and they just do their budget if they're budget oriented or they do their small piece of work. And I think if you actually try to see what else is going on in organization, how can I use better all these resources, and also what else can be done, let's say in the geographic region where I am, and bring ideas back to my colleagues, not only to myself. I think the more you do that when you are young, the more successful you become. Be more curious.
Sounds like great advice. Finally, if you were asked to put together an evening of TV dedicated to Marina Williams' career, which three series would you choose and which service would you brand them under?
Well, good question. I didn't sell so many series as you know, but definitely Mad Men. I love this series. I think this is classic and iconic. I love from Endemol times Peaky Blinders, and this one is also incredible. I think it's incredible that British series could become so successful. You know, in the first season, nobody believed that it would take off so much, and then second, third season, and here we are. You know, it's a franchise, and it's incredible. And look what happened with the main actor as well. You know, the heights he's going to. So that's incredible. And the last one, I'll just mention the one that I watched recently, not the company I worked with, is Sherlock, which I adore. So maybe maybe we'll do something with that creator in future for some co-production business. This is the type of series I love.
Very good. Well, Marina Williams, thank you so much for being a guest on Here Comes Pod to discuss a fascinating career. I think the breaking news from today's chat is that at times it's been challenging, but also others it's been child's play. But as a leader in the business, you have always brought your talents from Russia with love.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Danny. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.